Welcome, everyone, to an evening edition of the Livin The Dream video podcast celebrating our graduates who have gone on to do great things since their time in the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. I'm Rishi Barran. I've been there from just about the start, and so has my guest today. Very honored to have a member of our first online graduating class. In fact, a valedictorian, our first online valedictorian for episode number 49, the Rob Dibble edition for a guy who knows a thing or two about Cincinnati Reds baseball. I'm talking to Mike Hart. Mike, what's happening tonight?
I'm doing great. How about you, Rishi?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. I have thought about you as a guest for this for such a long time, but you have another career, which we'll get into as well. And when I saw you picked up some more sportscasting things you were doing, I'm like, let's get him on. We got to get him on. So I appreciate your time tonight. And I always think that this is fun because it's a chance for you to look back at your life, which has been packed with a lot of different things that we'll get into. Mike's story, unique compared to anybody else we've had in the program. And I think it'll inspire not just people who want to get into sportscasting, but also people who might have interests outside of sportscasting who can use the skills from the program to dive deep into what we're doing. Let's go to the start, though. Where did the dream of becoming a sportscaster start for you, Mike?
Yeah, I think the dream probably started when I was about 7 or 8 in my bedroom, where most people would go to sleep, listening to music, or would go to sleep, uh, just listening to other things, and I like to listen to AM radio. I had a AM radio where every night I'd go to sleep listening to Marty and Joe on the radio, Reds games. That was how I'd fall asleep, and then I'd wake up to it, to the morning show in the morning. So ever since then, I've not only fallen in love with the Reds, but have fallen in love with this aspect of broadcasting and being able to talk and know about sports. What always impressed me about those guys is they were not only great at being genuine, it was their real selves with a great conversation, but they knew so much. And so that's always something that's always really impressed me, and that what I've wanted to do is, sometimes you hear broadcasters, I don't want to throw shade, but there's sometimes they say things and you're just like, that's not really right, or that's not quite true. Um, and so I've always wanted to make sure that when I present, it's something coming from a base of knowledge, things that I have paid attention to and studied and like to tell other people about. So that's kind of where it started. My mom loved to take me to Reds games. My brother and we went to tons of Reds games in the late 90s and early 2000s. Unfortunately, the Reds were really bad at that time, so we didn't see very many winning games, but it really still instilled in me kind of this idea of fandom, no matter what. And that's served me well as a Reds or a Bengals fan, which I happen to be both of. Yeah, that's where it's gone from there. I've always been very interested in it, and then actually I went to school for something completely different, graduated, and had another career. And it wasn't until I heard I forget how I heard about it, but I heard about it and was like, wow, that sounds really interesting to do. And that's when I decided to take the leap. I said, I was working full time, but I said, all right, let's try this sportscasting. Let's see if this is a dream that I can still pursue, even with my other degree and my other career. So that's kind of my origin story on how I came to Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. And very, very thankful that I was able to go through it. I learned so much and really enjoyed my time there.
Well, we're thankful too because you are a great student and a great role model for people who came after you. Many people probably still here and there, class here and there, might still have a video of your early work because it was very good. I know I had videos of your work for a while, but you were a Reds fan, and I know from knowing you that history is important to you. And what better breadth of history in baseball than the Big Red Machine? How did you enjoy being a Reds fan as a young person, maybe even if they weren't winning as much as they did in the past?
I enjoyed so in Cincinnati, opening day is like its own holiday. They have a big parade that goes down through downtown, and so that was always the biggest celebration, especially because every year you're able to talk yourself into, oh man, this is it. This is the year it's going to change, right? This is the year that we're going to do well. And actually, in 1999, they made it all the way. This is pre any of the extra wild card spots in Major League Baseball. I think they won like 95 games, and they made it to like they had a 1 game playoff against the Mets. And my mom took me, we were literally in the top row of Synergy Field, where there's this fence behind us, wind blowing on us. We're freezing cold. It's the middle of October, or the end of October, or I guess end of September, beginning of October. And the Reds get like 5-hit shutout and lose lose the game and don't go to the playoffs. So unfortunately, it was marred by a bunch of disappointment. But to me, fandom is, and hopefully this is hopefully what I'm trying to teach my kids too. It's like the experience that you get while watching, even if it leads to not what you hope would happen, right? For everyone but one person, every fan base but one fan base, it's going to end in heartbreak, whether it ends in week 6 or if it ends in the championship. So that's what I think of when I think of fandom, is like being passionate and excited about a team, even when they haven't necessarily given you that much to be excited about all the time.
You live in the Columbus area now, and as a kid, Ohio State probably brought you a lot more wins than the Reds and the Bengals did for a while. What are your memories of Ohio State football?
Yeah. So I grew up in Cincinnati, which is about an hour and a half away from Columbus. And I remember the 2001 or 2002 national championship that they won. I wasn't like a diehard fan, but I followed and obviously wanted them to win. I was still a kid at that point. But then I actually moved to Columbus. I graduated from Georgia Tech in 2013 and moved up to Columbus, and because my wife went to Ohio State. And
Mm,
so I moved up into that area. And the first year that I was there, they won the national championship in
how about
2014.
that?
And yeah, I was fully bought in at that point. And now, Ohio State it's definitely what I live and die for on Saturdays. And it's a lot of fun. I get a lot of comments because of my name. Mike Hart was actually a running back for Michigan, and I like to make sure I point out that he was 0-4 against Ohio State. So uh, it was yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you're right on some of the disappointing years, because there's a bunch of Bengals and Browns fans in Columbus. So we call it, we're sad football fans, except for, hey, at least we got the Buckeyes. That's what we say every Sunday night when the Ohio football teams let us down. It's like, hey, at least we got the Buckeyes.
Well, Mike Hart is actually from the area I am. Probably grew up about 45 minutes away from where I did. And the legendary stories. He played in at a very small school in high school. And the legendary stories, including, I think, his final game in the state championship, he ran for like three something. I don't remember. It was a
Wow.
super high number and a huge comeback they had. But I was, because of him, and I've interviewed him before. I think when I heard you were going to our school, I was like, yeah. Mike Hart, all right. And by the way, the same high school Latavius Murray played at later when I was shooting in the area, when I was a sportscaster there, and I would shoot his games. Guy would score 4 touchdowns in the first 10 minutes, and I'd have my footage and be out the door. So that was good. So,
That's helpful.
but in terms of you, you mentioned Georgia Tech. I know you were involved on the swimming and diving team there. Where did your swimming background begin?
Yeah, so I started swimming when I was young, and I swam and played baseball basically all the way up until my sophomore year of high school. And I actually partially tore my meniscus. I was a catcher. And so a partially torn meniscus was not very good for having to squat down. And so instead of surgery, we just I just worked with physical therapy, and I already swam. So, and that was pretty low contact. They're like, actually, this will be very helpful for you in recovery. And then I stopped playing baseball because of the injury, and I got a lot better at swimming. Accordingly, I finally focused on swimming, and I got a lot better, and ultimately got recruited to swim at Georgia Tech. So I swam on their varsity team for 4 years down in Atlanta, and that was a ton of fun. It was good. They recruited me there, but part of why I wanted to go there as well was because of their engineering program. So I have bachelor's in chemical and biomolecular engineering down there as well. So that was very important to me of getting that engineering degree while also being able to do swimming. So I graduated. After I graduated, I haven't been let's just say I kind of hung up the swimsuit on that one. I don't really get in and swim very much, but I'm at the age now where I have young kids. I got a 5, 3, and 1 year old. So I spend a lot of time now at the pool, hopefully teaching them to be able to swim, to be able to enjoy it the way I did as well. So we'll see. We're almost at the age where my oldest might be able to start being on the swim team, which is, that's just a ton of fun too. Those summer nights where, kids are running around, hopped up on sugar and Fun Dip and swimming a few races. So I'm excited for that whenever that comes around as well.
That's Mike Hart. I think I forgot to mention this at the beginning, by the way. He's a host for Chatterbox Sports, covering both the Bengals and the Reds. Reds is probably his primary beat, but some Bengals work as well. And he's also a full-time engineer still, working for a company called NiSOURCE. Is that right?
That's right. Hmm.
Great. So he's still working there, a lead risk consultant the last 2 years there. We'll dive into that later, but diving in, Mike, as a swimmer, what was your stroke?
I swam butterfly. So I swam the 100 and 200 butterfly was my stroke. I actually was at a nationals with, Michael Phelps. So I
Oh
swam,
boy.
obviously was not nearly as good, but got to swim in. I can say that I swam in the same event as Michael Phelps,
Wow.
even though he swam significantly faster than I did. But yeah, so 200 butterfly was my best event. I'm convinced that ended up that became my best event just because I was the one that was willing to suffer the most because the 200 butterflies is
That's
considered
tough,
one of the
man.
worst events, and I was willing to suffer through it more, and so that's why I was better at it. So
Oh
yep,
man.
those are my two main events when I swam.
Well, now we got to get deeper into the Michael Phelps
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
So share with us the story of the day that you swam against Michael Phelps.
So I guess my go-to story for Michael Phelps is when the pool in Atlanta is actually the pool when the Olympics were there in 1996. So it is a extremely nice pool. People come there all the time. In fact, they host national meets all the time there. Um, so it was national meet going there, and they have like a separate pool for warming up and warming down. So I'm warming up and warming down, and I'm talking to my friend, and Michael Phelps swims over, and there's like diving wells. I don't know if you know that there's
Hmm.
like a 10 meter, but then there's also a 7.5, a 3, and a 1 meter. And I'm talking to my friend, and Michael Phelps comes up and reaches his enormous arm up and just grabs a hold of the 1 meter and is just hanging there with like looking like a condor with his arm it's seemingly like out of socket, just kind of like stretching and then chatting with the person, not the person I'm talking to, but the person next to him. And we both were talking and just kind of like, so this is probably 2012. So this is after he's already done his Beijing, where he won all
Wow.
the Olympics, but he was still at the peak of his powers. He would go on. I think this might have been pre the London Olympics. So he's still, the most recognizable swimmer going at that point. And so he's just hanging there. And we were talking, we just kind of stopped talking because we are just like, there he is right there. I can't, it's like I've met him one time. I met him at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. We happened to be there at the same time because it's at altitude, and they have a nice pool there. And we were like at a training trip at the same time his group was. So I've met him once, but it was one of those things where you're just sitting there in awe of somebody that it doesn't even feel like he's the same species as you sometimes because of how huge and long he is. And I always say this about Michael Phelps. He absolutely, if you were to design a human in a lab to be a good swimmer, having a super long torso and arms and then kind of a shorter legs with just flippers for feet, that would be how you would design it. However, he had a ridiculous amount of talent, but he also just trained more than anybody else. So it was, when it comes to swimming, a lot of people I think is like, oh, Michael Phelps, just like if I was blessed with that body, I'd be, just as good. And I'm telling you, you wouldn't be, because this dude worked harder than anybody else for a very, very long time. So, Yeah, that's my Michael Phelps story.
Did you
And
have
crush
did
with
you
greatness.
did you have the lead on him at any point
No,
in
never, not
the
once.
fly?
No,
No.
no. Well, so the way that these national meets work is they kind of seed you by your time, and so there's only 10 lanes, and there was maybe 50 people entered. So I swam in like heat one or two, so near the end, and he swam in the last heat. So I didn't ever head to head race
Mm.
him. Just swam in the same
Same
event as
event.
he.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Still
We raced
impressive enough.
same pool.
Very cool. Well, what was your Georgia Tech experience like as a whole? Obviously, a much different type of school than Full Sail.
Yeah, it was good because swimming was basically a full-time job as an athlete. You're juggling school at Georgia Tech was very rigorous, and then swimming was 20 hours in the week just in the pool plus additional weight room and dry land and stuff like that. Plus, we did travel a little bit. We didn't travel too terribly much. We mostly stayed. Most of the ACC schools were right around there, and it was right as Maryland or right after Maryland had left. So we there was Boston College, but we never went up that way. It was mostly in the Clemson and Virginia Tech area is about as far as we would go. So we had a little bit of travel, but it was a lot. I didn't really do a terribly too much other stuff besides school and swimming. I mean, I was a big fan of the baseball team. I know that's a shocker to everyone there, but it was there were a couple major leaguers that were there at the same time. A guy named Derek Dietrich, who actually played for the Reds for a little bit and now I
Mhm.
think is in the Yankees minor league system. Played for the Marlins as well. And then a guy named Buck Farmer. Buck Farmer, who's I think he started as a starter with the Tigers and actually is with the Reds organization right now as well. So both of them were there at the same time I was. So it was pretty cool to see and kind of follow them as well as it's like, oh, I know those guys. I remember when they were my age.
Buck Farmer's a great name.
Oh yeah.
So
He's
I would love that
exactly
name.
how you would imagine a buck farmer to be as well. He's from like rural Georgia. His name is Buck Farmer and he's the most country guy you'll ever meet. And he also throws 95 miles an hour. So
Gotta
it's it
gotta love it.
yeah, it's great.
So at Georgia Tech, I'm sure it was not easy to be a varsity athlete and go through an engineering program. How did you respond to that challenge?
Well, part of why I ended up picking Georgia Tech was because of how many people on the swim team were also in engineering. I know there was a few other schools that I visited, and they were also recruiting me. And when I talked about engineering, they were like, "Oh," they would almost chuckle, like, "Okay, good luck," But at Georgia Tech, I think about 70% of the people on the team were also engineers. So I think that part really helped. My senior year, I lived in a house that had three chemical engineers, an aerospace engineer, and a mechanical engineer, and a biomedical engineer, and we're all on the swim team together. So it was we joked is like we really should be building something here. I don't know what, but it was so having a group of people that understood what you were going through and even were able to help. I had a really good friend of mine who was in all of my chemical engineering classes, and he actually ran track and cross country at at Georgia Tech as well. So it was one of those where you know you're able to work together to understand. Hey, there's times where we have to study, and there's times where it's just like, well, I gotta sleep because I gotta go. I gotta be at practice at 6 a.m. tomorrow, and so there was some give and take when it comes to that. That I think definitely taught me a lot of really good things for my life. Being able to understand how to budget time, how to understand priorities, and I obviously was still able to have a lot of fun in college. It didn't quite look I think what the typical college aspect would be. And then when I came to Full Sail, it was all online, so I didn't. I only got to visit Winter Park once, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it was really good to be able to see that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what you were able to accomplish never having set foot on campus until that time, right? So, incredible story of Mike Hart, and a big part of it is engineering. So, you graduated from Georgia Tech. I know you worked at several different places with several different responsibilities, but including now, what's life like as an engineer?
Yeah, so I work as like you said, a risk consultant. That's I work developing and maintaining a risk model for a natural gas company. So basically, I take in a bunch of data and evaluate it to help people make decisions that are based on information from lots of different spots, because there's millions and millions of dollars that go into what we should fix, what we should do new, and all that kind of stuff. So we take all that information and spit it out in a way, and most crucially explain what our results are to the people that make the decisions on what work should be done. So and I say that because ultimately I think that is probably where I got the most out of what I did at Full Sail, and how I'm able to apply it to this job. Because ultimately what it did is it made me a much better communicator. Whether it was the voice lessons that we got, or understanding how to slow yourself down to be more effective, how to not use too much hand motions, and how to better present yourself on camera, or even how to lead a discussion and things like that. These are all things that have really helped me when it comes to explaining something that would be confusing or is difficult to people that need to understand. And that is, I think, a crucial thing that I learned at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting.
Well, let's reverse it the other way now. So that helped you from sportscasting now, but what helped you from engineering that you took from engineering to make you better at sportscasting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am a big fan of spreadsheets. I know that that's probably not news to anyone here. So I like to utilize spreadsheets to help organize my thoughts, whether it's a rundown or whether it is a notes that I need to talk about for a specific game. And so that's how I typically organize it. And I think that that helps me in my experience being able to deal through spreadsheets and things like that. I think definitely helped with how not only my time at Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, but now as a sportscaster. I also I think engineering, especially specifically the engineering that I do, we are so geared towards solving problems and identifying what issues there are, and then trying to come together and collaborate to determine what are viable solutions and which should be the best. And I think that that actually goes a lot into sportscasting, right? Because there's often multiple angles in which you can approach how you record something, how you broadcast something, what graphics should I use, and things like that. So I think that mindset helped me understand. Okay, let's think about what will play better, and be able to lay out my decisions before making one, so that you can hopefully make something that will be good to watch or listen to, and good for other people to watch and listen to as well.
Problem solving is such an important part of the job, and attention to detail is too. And my father, I've told this I think before on this show, but never a better time to talk about it than when I'm actually with an engineer. My father was trained to be an engineer, and then during college he discovered acting, and so he went into acting, and he talked to me about how he took concepts from engineering to apply to acting, including that attention to detail. Now, there aren't many jobs where the details matter more than engineering. What did you see from that carried over into your work at our school and beyond?
Yeah, I think that that's a huge thing as well, because in my field, lack of something small can lead to $1 million mistake, right? Like ultimately, we are it when I back up and think about the things that I affect in my company, it's sometimes a little sobering, because wow, not only am I helping with decision making, but also helping identify areas that maybe need to be worked on because of safety issues or potential consequences that could happen if there were something to go wrong. And so, what I have to do has a very big effect on other people, and sometimes maybe even their safety. So having that attention to detail is very important what I have here. And I think that shines through in sportscasting, because that's what sets you apart. Um, when you the difference between I think there's like the amount of effort to get to 90% pretty good on a video is not too terribly high. But that last, I'm gonna say 9%, because getting to 100% is almost impossible. But that last bit right there is where almost the same amount of work is required to get to the 90 than to get that last 9% there because of the details. And it's rewatching and being like, does that sound right? Or, oh, I came in a little bit too early there, or that's catching a breath, or I'm swallowing that word because, these are things that you could leave and you could just say it's good enough, but definitely sets you apart if you choose to focus on them. So I think that aspect of attention to detail can really set you apart because it just makes it look far more polished. Because it is because it is more polished. You put more work into it, and oftentimes that shows in the presentation.
That fits right in with what you were saying about Michael Phelps. And I think about that stuff all the time. A lot of athletes are great enough to make it, but the ones that stand out, most of them, I'm sure there are a few exceptions here or there, most of them are the ones that put in the extra work. And you'd put in a lot of work in the field that you're in now throughout your life. But then, as you mentioned earlier, you made this decision to come to Full Sail University. Now, at the time, we did have campus students, but we didn't have any online students until you arrived. How did that all transpire?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually got the call that I was accepted while I was at a resort in Mexico. So I was on vacation. I was like, oh, what do I need to? And so I'm like logging on to the Wi-Fi to make sure that I get everything I needed submitted. So it was a lot of fun. And an interesting part of it too was while it was going, COVID ended up playing into it as well. So I'm trying to think. It actually, let's see, I graduated like right as COVID was happening. And so there was this online thing that then led to everyone being online with Full Sail as well. So it was one of those things that I'd never done anything online before. And to be honest, it's gonna like doing, online Zoom conferences with teachers and preparing things and submitting things through the portal and things like that all really helped me for when everyone decided or we needed to go online for uh, when COVID hit. So it's very interesting to see how that's just like a very interesting thing that prepared me for the real world as we were going. But it was pretty interesting because I was learning a ton and but I was still working. And so I had like specific budgeted times. It's like on Sunday evenings, I needed to work because obviously that was the due dates. I had to get it in before midnight, right? And then I think I would have homeworks on Wednesday. So I had to have designated times where it's like, I need to work on these things. And I also needed to kind of stay on top of it because there were often times where it's like I could sit down and type out whatever I need to prepare and record what I need to. But there were definitely parts in classes where you have to go do something. And I think the worst grade I ever got was in Mark Condon's class because
That's not
I was going to,
surprising.
yeah, I had this thing planned. My friends were going to this like arcade slash putt putt slash go karts place or whatever. And I was going to stitch together my video from all this thing. And then it just starts dumping. And so I got about a quarter of the footage that I needed to. So I'm stitching together this 10-minute video with like way less of the video that I wanted to. And yeah, it didn't turn, it's not one of my best work. It's not one of those I'm putting on the highlight reel, but all that to say is there's a level of planning that you have to do in order to make sure that you're not scrambling on Sunday evening. It's like, well, I need to be in front of something while I'm doing this shot. It's like, well, it's dark out now. So understanding how to plan your schedule and what you need to do, I think was another really important thing as I was doing this online school while I was still working full time.
That's Mike Hart. He put together both his engineering background and his Full Sail sportscasting background to be a part-time broadcast operations engineer for Major League Baseball at one point. We'll get into that later, but I want to know more about the Full Sail experience right now, Mike. What is interesting to me is you got kind of the rough draft of every class because you were in the first online class. And for most of us, we hadn't taught online before. So we were kind of learning ourselves while hopefully providing you with a high level education at the same time. What were the advantages and disadvantages of going through the program as the first class?
You know, I I didn't it wasn't very apparent to me that most of the teachers hadn't taught online before. So it wasn't one of those things where I was like, I can't really follow what's going on here. For the most part, I didn't it wasn't much different than even my on campus degree that I had previously. So that part of it, I think you guys did a great job even from the jump. And I'm sure, especially after COVID, it's dialed in even more what it was when I went through it. But I guess an interesting thing about that was um, I'm I'm a very social person. I'm a very outgoing, uh, extroverted person. So it took a lot of getting used to being like, I, it took a while because I was in the class with the same guys and with the same people for each class, the same like five or six people. And I never really like met them. So that was a little bit weird. And then,
I bet.
but then, eventually we started there. I started taking more advantage of the teacher office hours,
Yeah.
basically, where it's everyone could log on and ask questions, but
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes we'd log on, ask questions, but then just socialize a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
get to
Sure.
talk about what we're doing, how we're doing, what sports we're following, how our teams are doing, and things like that. So it was one of those where it took me a little bit to recognize it. And the first couple classes as well are some of the classes that aren't as sportscasty related, your English classes, your math class and things like that. But as we moved on into it, it was really nice to be able to get to know. I actually was able to do a few broadcasts. We had some assignments where we had to do it with partners and things like that. So finding a time to do that and setting up OBS to be able to have both of you on there and managing that while also trying to say something that's intelligible is difficult. And but it was great training for what we were able to do. I've well, I think a theme that I like to take from from this sportscasting degree that I have was never waste a chance to learn a new skill. Like OBS, for example, I learned OBS and then I actually helped a buddy of mine who runs a card store
Huh.
in Columbus set up his online through OBS. I basically set it up for him to break cards, and what that means is
Wow.
just open cards live on the internet for him to be able to do that, which is basically all he was able to do once COVID hit. Right? He basically what is like people would buy in on different packs. He'd open them live on YouTube or Instagram, and so I like help set that up for him. So it's things like that. Also, in my current job, I actually am the voice of one of our departments. Like that, when they call in, the first the first thing you hear is "Thank you for calling the NiSOURCE Clearance Center," and it's me
It's
talking
you.
because they
Because you're good
were
at it.
well, they were like, "Well, we need to re-record these things," and I was like, "Well, I have recording equipment, and I know how to edit things up into a WAV file that you need that's going to be exactly that way." And I did that maybe
Awesome.
3 years ago. And now, anytime anything changes, I don't even work in that department anymore. But anytime anything changes, they still come back to me and ask, "Hey, can you re-record this for me?" Because I'm the voice of the NiSOURCE Clearance Center and Gas Control. So it's one of those things that I learned this skill and you never know where you're going to be able to utilize it and in what you do. So I think that's pretty cool that I was able to get some of this knowledge and then be able to use it in pretty random ways.
Yeah, and I also think it's pretty cool that when you came to us, you didn't have any broadcasting background.
That's true.
Couple of people in your graduating class, Melvin Jones, who joined you later, and Richard Tiemann, who I think was with you the whole time,
Hmm.
they had done some broadcasting in different sources. It was this is all new to me, and you always seem to have that wide-eyed enthusiasm of everything you learned. As someone who was outside of broadcasting, being introduced to it, what was that fresh feeling like for you?
Oh man, extremely nerve-wracking. I'm still not very good at reading a prompter and I'm always really critical of, like, am I looking at the right spot? Because I like to look at the person on the camera like I'm talking to you in person. Like I'm looking at your picture, not the near the camera. So
Right,
I
right,
have to
right,
adjust things to
right.
make it. There
Exactly.
was a let's just say there was a lot of takes at the beginning because I frankly wasn't very good at it, and it's a skill that takes a lot to get used to. There was a lot of and I still do that a little bit, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better at being able to organize my thoughts and explain them in a way that can be conversational without the irky jerkiness of having all those filler words in there. So it was definitely tough at the beginning. I was much more comfortable with the behind the scenes stuff, the editing, the putting things together, or even just recording over voiceover of something. That I felt much more comfortable that way than being directly in front of the camera. And it took a while for me to feel comfortable to be able to do that.
Let's see if you remember this one. So I had
Oh,
you twice for class, right? So I
mm-hmm.
had you your second class you had, and then your last class that you had. First class we had was a broadcast writing class. And I remember one time giving you feedback about what you had shot when you were still learning, and there was a clock behind you. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that clock. Yes.
So
It
he
was,
had a clock behind him, and I don't know how many of you watching this are fans of the show The Simpsons, but I remember I told you this in your feedback. There's an episode called Homer Bad Man where it's almost like this. Anybody who remembers the old like tabloid journalism TV show Hard Copy? It was kind of like a replication of that, and they showed all these clips of Homer saying stuff, but it had been edited to like make it fit their agenda. And there's this clock behind him, and the hands kept moving. So you sent in a clip and you had, as you said, it took you a few takes to get it. So you had kind of edited everything together, but at the time you didn't realize those were jump cuts and the clock kept moving. So
yeah.
what did you think when I told you that?
I was like, I remember reading and being like, uh-oh. I need to change that. I had a greenish sheet that I would hang behind me instead that in iMovie it would pick it up like a green screen. So it was like
Oh,
a
nice.
green like comforter that I would hang behind me to try to prevent that from happening. That ultimately did end up being like a green screen. Now, I mean, the Zoom does a pretty good job of cutting you
Yeah.
off, but the idea is like if I take this and put it into iMovie because I'm recording it, I will be able to filter it out. So that's what I ended up doing, just like with a green comforter behind me. But yeah, I remember thinking that and be like, because I thought I was being sneaky. I was like, oh, he's probably not going to be able to tell. I was like, oh, I'm going to use this one from over here. I'm going to use this one from over here. If we were to go back and look, it probably wasn't sneaky at
Oh, I'm
all.
gonna find,
But
I'm gonna find it and
yeah,
cover this with you.
that's great. I hope so because it's like looking back on it, it's probably pretty funny.
Well, that leads to another big question, which is how much growth did you see from yourself from the beginning to the end?
Especially with the in front of the camera stuff, just the leaps and bounds. It would take me quite a while to get everything I needed and then record and then try to edit it up and then not be happy with it or something was off and I had to record it again. But by the end, I was much more fluid at being able to understand, okay, that was a good enough take, or oh, I need to try that again. So it was I had a pretty good system down by the end, and I think just the reps is what I think was just invaluable. This is what's great about this is I never felt like anything I was doing was unnecessary. Everything that I was doing was, even if it was silly or fictional, doing something about a fictional thing that was happening, I was able to understand that this is something that's helping me because it's giving me reps. It's giving me chances to practice how I talk in front of the camera, how I edit things up, how I can maybe add things to spice things up. So that was one thing that I really did enjoy. And I think it definitely paid benefits at the end. I feel that I was much better at not only what the product that I was producing, but how I was able to do it and how quickly I was able to put those things together.
As if you didn't have enough of a time crunch between your full-time job and school, you had your first child during your time with us. How did you manage your time once we got to that point?
Yeah. So that was also very interesting because he was born April 2020. And that was like when everything shut down. So it was very odd because all of a sudden I'm just at home all the time with arguably more time to myself, right? Because we weren't hanging out with friends, we weren't going out to dinner, we weren't. It was that with a newborn. So shout out to my wife; she was the one that really held things together as I was doing that type of thing. But it was definitely an experience. I thought about trying to figure out a way to get him into something that we were doing. I don't think it ended up ever working that way, but it's crazy because he's 5 now, and it doesn't feel like it's been that long since then. But it was a lot of work for sure, and there were some things that I had to adjust. I don't remember. I think I probably let the teacher know, hey, this is happening. Um, but it was one of those things where I just another thing that we had to work around to try to make sure that I got things in on time.
Yeah, and you mentioned how you were kind of set up in a way for success after graduation because of COVID and already knowing, already taking the classes online, you were kind of already in a good position. But still, weren't a lot of sports going on at the time. So
Oh
I
yeah.
remember the times when we were like all excited for some like Korean baseball that was the first thing played, and I'm sure you probably remember that.
I put together like a highlight reel of that KBO game. So I just like set up like a typical MLB game, but I did it, I'm having to do take over take over take to try to pronounce their names right. So it's out there somewhere on YouTube. It's
So
pretty it was a lot of I remember I also did a big thing on the discussions that the Players Association was having with MLB on what the baseball season would be. I was like, I got 12 minutes or something like that out of the different reasons why things should be the way they are or what they were proposing, and just using B-roll of spring training over all of it.
Well, you made it work, and I remember by the final month, I specifically remember you did, and this was the first online 6 and 11 sportscast, and I remember thinking like, "Oh man, how is this assignment going to transition? Is it going to work? Can they pull it up?" More on your end, like, are they going to be able to understand all the things we're telling you? And you did a magnificent job on that. I used your example for a long time, probably like 2 years or something, because it was so good. What did you take out of putting those final pieces together once you got to the end?
Yeah, I think that was I was in a suit and tie and things like that, trying to make it as professional as possible. And I think I actually probably just gained a lot of respect for the people that have to do that on a night in, night out basis. Like those guys roll in every single day, guys and gals roll in every single day and are able to do that. And I can definitely say that having gone through the sportscasting school, I have a huge amount of respect for any professional sportscasters that do that now because of just how difficult it was for me to do it. And a lot of them do it live. People talk like, oh, do you want to do, you could do play by play for Major League Baseball. And it's like, do you realize how much talking that is to do play by play for a whole baseball game, and how prepared you need to be and how natural you need to sound? Like, that is not, there's a reason there's only 30 jobs of those in the majors, because that is so difficult to do. So I definitely gained a ton of respect for the people that do that now because of just how much work it was for me to do something that was only a sliver of what they have to do in their job.
What did it mean to you to graduate from the program and on top of that, earn the first online valedictorian honor?
It meant a lot. I tried to head down there for graduating in person. I know Richard was able to be there. Would have been great to meet him in person. Have you talked to Richard on here before?
I have, yeah. He's
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
done one
So
of these, yes.
he's killing it out there in, I think, Montana right now, and he's a really cool guy. Really, I still keep in
Yeah.
touch with him a little bit, but it would have been cool to meet him in person. But to graduate as in the inaugural class, it definitely had this extra sense of pride of, yeah, hey, we blazed the trail here. They're going to be using us as positive and negative things to do because we were the first ones to do things. And so I think that is pretty cool. I think on my resume I do add as the inaugural class, just because I think it's pretty cool to be able to be a part of something that's grown so much. And it's putting I see work from all the people that are graduating and are in the sports world now, sportscasting world, and it's cool that they're able to go and do all this awesome stuff. And I was able to be a part of that as well.
And you did set a high bar, and I will always remember that. We always will. Dan will too, and he talks about it a lot, that those early classes set a high bar, and a lot of people are visual learners, Mike. So being able to see Mike Hart do his 6 and 11 about Game 7 of the World Series, now I can visualize, oh, how can I do it, right? So that was super important, because before then we didn't have student examples, because we didn't have, or at least not online student examples, and now we have them to show. So that was fantastic, and we will always remember that and be proud of it. And then post graduation, you were trying to kind of figure out what was next. You were still an engineer, and it's a hard job to give up, because it's a good job, right? But how did you navigate post graduation in terms of, am I going to stick with engineering, or is this broadcasting the main path for me now?
Yeah, the first kind of gig that I got, paid gig out of after working for or after graduating, was I worked for Major League Baseball. So I worked as a broadcast operations engineer, and the idea I worked as like behind the scenes, the people that set up the streams for MLB.TV and minor MILB.TV. So I tell people is like I got paid to watch baseball, which was so I would work during the day and then come home and work till midnight, basically setting up streams 3 or 4 times a week, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a ton about all of the equipment and all of the modems and the broadcast equipment that they utilize, and this was at the beginning too. It was interesting because I got the job because all of that work was for MLB was had been done in New York, and then COVID hit and they sent everyone home, and they realized that they could do a lot of this remote. So, there's obviously West Coast games, right? And they had guys staying in New York till 3 a.m. basically to get it all closed up. And they realized we can just hire somebody in Los Angeles or in the West Coast to be able to do that. So we don't have to. So they ended up spreading that out. And I was, I did it all from my basement. And it was a lot of fun. I learned a ton, and it was a lot of work pregame, and then you're kind of just like the first line of defense, IT defense. So if something goes wrong, you have to notify whoever it is. I had a few different things that I could try, but if it was something that was, past level one, I would basically bring it on to the level that it needed to work with. So and they also knew I was a Reds fan too. So I would get these things started, and then I just get paid to watch Reds games. And then after my first year, I actually moved more towards I moved away from 3 or 4 days a week. They actually offered me after my first year, they offered me to come on full time, giving me full time hours. And I actually almost took it. I was at a crossroads. Do I leave engineering and do this, work for Major League Baseball? Would have been a huge thrill of mine. The only thing with Major League Baseball is that because they would have given me full 40 hours a week, including in the off season, but because it would have had to be seasonal just by based on how they do that. And so because of that, it didn't come with benefits. And my wife was actually pregnant with our second kid at the time. So it was one of those tough decisions that I had to make where I was like, I need to stay here because I needed the benefit insurance. So I was able to continue to work with them. I did it for three different years. And I ended up moving more towards the minor league. So I'd have 16 16 different games up at a time, and you're monitoring to make sure the audio and video is going and things like that. And that one is, it's interesting because there's more things because there's more games, but there's less you can do. you know Basically, the score bug goes out, you have to call up their person and be like, hey, your score bug's out, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll fix it on Monday. So there's a different level of production
Yeah,
in the
sure.
minor leagues that makes it. One time I was on the phone with the guy who's the play-by-play, and he had to hang up on me because he had to run out to go pull the tarp. So it's all hands on deck when it comes to the minor leagues. Those guys have a lot of hats. So it was a ton of fun, and I learned a ton. Like I said, I feel probably more comfortable behind the scenes. So learning all of that and understanding the graphics passages and all of the different things that were out there, and how a major league sport goes about doing things. I learned so much that was really helpful for what I am able to do today with Chatterbox.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute, but I do want to ask, how did you find out about the job with Major League Baseball?
I just went on to their careers site and found it. I applied to a bunch of them. I was trying to figure out, hey, what are some ways that I can use this degree? And I just went on to the job site at Major League Baseball and applied to it. So it was one of those where I had to do. I was in the process of doing some grinding to try to get my resume out there. I remember they actually asked for an interview while I was on vacation again.
You,
So
you just, who knows what's going to happen? You're about to go on vacation. Who knows
you're
what's
right.
going to happen there?
You're right. I'm going on vacation, leaving tomorrow, so I got to make sure I got everything ready. I might have another job offer for me coming through, not that I don't even know about yet. But it was, yeah. So I remember I'm in Myrtle Beach, just in one of the bedrooms, trying to talk back and forth about what I knew, and I felt like such an imposter when I first started because there was just you think the amount of alphabet soup is bad with this. There were so many terms that I just like had a notebook where I'm just like writing down acronyms for things. I'm just like, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? That I then had to basically come back to is like, hey, what does this mean? Hey, what does this mean? Hey, what does this mean? And so it was definitely drinking from a fire hose when I started, but it was, I think, one of the reasons that they liked me was because I was able to pick it up pretty quickly. And the what I think is a good thing that people can take as, when you go and get that initial job, working hard and identifying ways that need help is really can set you apart. If you're consciously not only thinking of ways that you can help that you've been told to, but also ways that you're anticipating problems or issues that are coming up in ways that you might be able to contribute there. That is something that anyone that's ever been a boss, if you have somebody who's like, hey, you know, now we have this problem. It's like, oh, I already thought of that. Here's my solution for it. Like that, you immediately get high marks for that. So I think that mindset of not only being willing to work hard and do well the things that you've been assigned, but to kind of try to help understand what's going on so you can anticipate issues as they come can be really beneficial. And it helps stand out with the people that you're working for.
That was behind the scenes work, but now we get to see that face on air. That's a face for TV, right? So, what's it like living the dream, Mike?
It's a lot of fun. I get to be in front of the camera talking about my favorite team. And I work with Chatterbox Sports. Chatterbox Sports it's like a media company that covers the Cincinnati area sports, so Reds, Bengals, but also University of Cincinnati and University of Miami, things like that. And it's a thrill. I remember I think I reached out to you after my first two shows. I was really nervous. Rishi, can you give me some feedback, please? Like, could you help me
I
see
said,
like
no, watch out for that clock on the wall, Mike.
that's right. That's right. The so I and you gave me some great feedback, and I think that it was one of those that I hadn't really done something like that in a while, so it took me a little bit of time to get my feet underneath me. But I really enjoy it, and I have one thing that I like to do with it is it's a pregame show, so it's pregaming a baseball game. So we have the lineup on there, and I've been trying as the season goes on to try to add additional things to it to add to the viewer's experience. So we've added things like the opposing team's lineup. We'll have a graphic that comes up so they can see that when we talk about it. We have like what to watch for is where we put up different statistics or matchups that we're looking for and trying to highlight for the team. So that is understanding and learning that and then trying to improve it each time is kind of what I've really enjoyed doing. And they have asked me to, I started doing just basically a pregame show on Fridays. So I was before Friday's game, I would do a pregame show, like a 30-minute pregame show, which was awesome. It was great. I was able to do that, but I was able to help them a lot behind the scenes again. And whether it's with graphics or YouTube thumbnails or descriptions of things to, try to crack the code of some of the SEO that is out there. But then they've asked me to start filling in as well on post game shows. So the post game show is actually kind of where they grew from. These guys do a post game show. They go live in the ninth inning for every single Reds game, every single one. I guess not everyone now because on Sundays they don't, but So, it's a grind. And these guys have built up what they've built, which is like a really cool following within Cincinnati Reds fans because they have just been willing to grind. They're willing to go live in a cool win, but also a really frustrating loss. And they're there, and it's become kind of ingrained in this fandom. Just like I watch the game and then I flip on Nick and Trace, and they've asked me to be a part of that, and it's been really cool to help them. They have the right attitude about things. It's just like, hey, we just got to work hard, and we got to keep putting out as and keeping our heads down and doing what we can. And I love being a part of that, something like that, because that's the attitude that I like to have as well. So helping out these guys doesn't even feel like a job. It's like I get to experience my hobby of talking about the Reds. That my wife says is I say all the same things I would say to her the whole time. I just now get to record it on for everyone to see. So
Yeah, and the fact that you've increased the role to wear all those extra hats, much like your buddy pulling the tarp for minor league baseball, is impressive. What I'm curious about is you've always been a man who's wanted to grow in every area, and now you've been on air all these times for these shows. Where have you seen the most improvements on air in your work?
the most improvements on air. That's a good question. I think it is being able to move more seamlessly because when I do my pregame show, I do it with somebody else. So it's not just me. And being able to move more seamlessly with my partner is something that I think I've gotten a lot better at. It obviously comes with as you get to know them, there's a rapport that comes with it. So I can understand his cadence, talking cadence. So we're not talking over each other and things like that. But I think that I have learned a lot about, okay, I can understand it here. And then how I can transition to asking him rather than just be like, what do you think, Ricky? And what do you think, Ricky? Ricky's my partner, by the way. And being able to craft questions to ask him and then craft more segues to move to the different points that we have throughout the show. That is something that I would say I've gotten better at as I have gotten all these reps under my belt. And it's definitely, I definitely still struggle sometimes, or I'm like looking something up and I go, for a while or something like that as I'm trying to get my head around what I'm going to say. But for the most part, I think I've gotten a lot better at being able to be on camera with somebody and have that conversation when you're not in the same room with someone, which is it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's where watching yourself helps. And I don't know how much time you have to do that with your engineering job and three kids and a wife and all that. But when you're able to go back and watch your work, and I think that was why it was great you reached out to me for feedback. I tried to point out those kind of things where things that felt repetitive and all that. So it's awesome to hear that you've seen yourself just get better and better with that. Back to what I was just talking about. Now you're balancing this gig with the engineering gig. You've balanced school, you've balanced the MLB opportunity behind the scenes, but how is that blend going for you now?
Yeah, it's tough. What's great about this is it can be a lot of work, and if they're on a West Coast trip, right, you're up late, and but it doesn't really feel that much. What I've always loved about sportscasting, obviously I have this other engineering job that I enjoy and I think that I'm pretty good at, and but this doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel I can definitely say that I'm living the dream, because you're doing these things and it's like, oh, what if I add that? It doesn't feel like I am compelled to do that. I feels like I get to do things that adds to help these guys on Chatterbox out, help what they build up, what they've built, and continue to see it ascend and be able to provide good and honest and genuine content to people that are Reds fans. And so that is it while it is a lot of work sometimes, it doesn't often feel that way because I just enjoy it so much.
Final big question. What are your future dreams
Ooh.
within broadcasting now?
Now, you sent me this question beforehand, and I was thinking about it a lot because if you would have told me that I would have been able to start doing this even maybe like a year ago now, I wouldn't have thought that this was something that was going to be an option for me. So, um, future wise, I would like to keep going, keep doing things with Chatterbox. I think I have some ideas for things we can do in the off season, and they seem pretty excited about wanting to continue to work with me, which is pretty cool and I enjoy. But it's I've always wanted to be like the like one of the PA announcers at a football game.
Hmm.
So, as my kids get older, maybe I can do something like that. I know
Yeah.
that feels like weird and off the beaten path, but I think it would be pretty cool to be, first and 10, and be able to call out something like that, or even help the high schoolers who are doing something like that and helping them in that aspect. So that's always something that I've kind of had in the back of my mind would be fun to do. But when it comes to the near future, I just would like to continue to make sure that I'm doing things that I have fun with. And so I don't have any grand plans, but it is something that as long as, I'm going out and I'm giving it 100%, giving it all that I have and being willing to do these, be a part of something that is genuine and I can provide awesome content, I'm happy with that. And so it would be whatever would allow me to be able to continue to do that.
Yeah, that PA idea is cool too, because I know that if you're up there having fun with it, the kids, the crowd, everybody is going to enjoy it too. So I like your mindset, and the fact that you say it doesn't feel like work. That just makes me happy that you're enjoying yourself, because I know how hard you worked in our program to get there. We like to end with something we call the dream sequence. It's three fast fire questions for you. So just kind of give me what's
All right.
on the top of your head. You ready?
Yes.
All right, I know it's kind of an office, but it also looks kind of like a man cave back there with the Barry Larkin cards, Anthony Munoz signed jersey, and the beautiful pictures from your kids. Dream item to add back there to your wall.
Oh, Uh, I actually just saw this. So the Reds actually just competed in that Speedway Classic, that Bristol Speedway, and they had these special helmets. So a dream article to be able to add to it would be a signed Ellie De La Cruz Speedway helmet. I
Hmm.
think that would be really cool. What you can't see is I have a whole bunch of bobbleheads over here too. I'm a big collector of things.
What's
So
your favorite of the bobbleheads?
favorite of the bobbleheads is probably Joey Votto as a
Oh, he's
Jedi.
got a prop stand
Yes,
up.
this
Nice.
is Joey Votto as a Jedi. Unfortunately, my kids broke the
That's what it
lightsaber
looks
off
like.
of it, but yeah, it's
Jedi
Jedi
Joey.
Joey.
Love it.
There you go. That's probably my favorite one that I have.
We actually had one of our grads, Christian Raposa, just covered the Speedway Classic, or
Oh,
whatever
cool.
they called it there. So he was there, unfortunately, because of the rain. It was
Yeah.
not quite what he hoped for, but it was still great. All right, back to the Reds. Dream Reds pitching rotation. Anyone who's ever pitched for the Reds, give me five.
Ooh, okay. Oh, wow. All right. So, um, Tom Seaver. Tom Seaver, obviously, I was at a Reds game recently, and I think he was on a list with Clayton Kershaw for X amount of like over 3,000 strikeouts and less than a 3 ERA. So he's great. Oh man, I'm trying to figure out whether I want to do ones that I love to watch. Like,
You can pick whoever
so
you want, the
yeah,
ones
I
you
know, I
want.
know, I know. So I'm gonna go Tom Seaver. I'm gonna kind of span some eras here. Uh, Jose Rijo, he was the ace for the 1990 team. I'd say, unfortunately, I didn't really get to see those guys pitch, but one guy I did get to see pitch, and I love to see him pitch was Johnny Cueto.
Oh yeah, that's
Johnny
what I thought you were gonna
Cueto,
say.
yeah, he pitched for the Reds and for when I think they went to the playoffs a few times in the I think the late 2010s. And so Johnny Cueto, um, I am a big fan of Bronson Arroyo. Bronson Arroyo, he had this huge leg kick and also had long flowing hair and liked to play guitar. And then I'm gonna add my dream one is my fifth one is gonna be from this current rotation. It's Chase Burns. Chase Burns was their number one pick last year, who's already up in the majors. He throws 101 with a wipeout slider. Needs to learn a couple more. I think he probably needs to learn maybe one more pitch to be effective more than twice through the lineup, but he's got all the makings to be just an incredible pitcher, and it feels great that he gets to be doing that in a Reds uniform. So those are my five: Tom Seaver, Jose Rijo, Johnny Cueto, Bronson Arroyo, and Chase Burns.
Well, the way you throw those stats out there, it's almost like you host a baseball show. So,
Yeah,
all
that's
right,
right.
one last one, which goes hand in hand with the baseball show. Dream Chatterbox Sports remote opportunity. You guys can go live from
Oh,
anywhere you want.
live from the World Series. That would be the dream. If we could go live. Well, we would go live pregame of Game 7, just being like, this is all we've been waiting for. The Reds won maybe a couple months before I was born. That was the last time they won the World Series. That's the last time anyone in Cincinnati has won a championship. They got close. The Bengals almost won a championship in 2021. We don't need to talk about that one. That one, I'm still not over it. But if we were able to go live from the World Series, and then the post game show after they won would be just an unbelievable dream. I'm not sure I'd know what to say just because I'd be just overcome with emotion, but that would be incredible. A great place to be able to do Chatterbox pregame and postgame.
You could just go back and look at your script from Game 7 in the 6 and
That
11
is true. That
Sportscast,
was
and
the
then you
one
would
where
find it.
he hit the ball off the foul pole. I had to say ringing it off the foul pole. I think I had to say that maybe like 3 or 4 times because I was trying to time it up to say ringing exactly when it hit the foul pole, and you could hear the dong in the background. So that is yeah, that was really fun.
That's the attention to detail you get from a sportscaster who's also an engineer. Final thoughts here, Mike. What advice do you have for anyone else who wants to work in the sportscasting business?
Yeah. Um, so I've talked a little bit about it, the importance of attention to detail, importance of anticipating the needs, but just being the successful, the difference between somebody that starts something and uh it fizzles and somebody that starts something and has longevity is hard work. So my advice is you got to put in the work. You got to make sure that you grind, and it's not always going to be easy, but the team at Chatterbox are where they are now because they were willing to put in the work. I think that the reason that I fit in with them is because I was willing to hop in there and help them out as well. So um, my advice is be willing to continue to work hard and try to find how you can add value to what you're doing, whether it's covering sports, whether it's covering other things, or whether it's behind the scenes doing editing and things like that. I think that stands out from the crowd, and if you're willing to do that, that I think is going to stick with you as you move up. I'm sure that if you talk to the head sports center anchors or Joe Buck and things like that, these are guys that are very willing to put the work in, and that's why they're part of a great reason why they're excellent at their job. So don't be afraid of it. In fact, lean into the fact that I have to work hard to do something, because that is going to be what sets you apart from everybody else.
It's been a fun hour. We learned that he was a competitor of Michael Phelps. We learned that he didn't make mistakes to cost his company millions of dollars. And we learned that he became a pretty good sportscaster too. Mike Hart, thanks so much for joining us today. He's living his dream. I hope you all keep living yours too.